Welcome back to the Dementia Collective, where we explore innovations and stories in dementia care. Before we dive in, if this is your first time joining us, my name is Andrew Karesa. I'm a caregiver, researcher, and founder of BlueBell Village. I started the Dementia Collective to share stories, tools, and ideas that support caregivers walking the dementia journey. I've been there myself, and I know how isolating and overwhelming it can feel. Our goal is simple: make dementia support personal, more connected, and more Indigenous informed, because every family deserves to feel seen and supported. So today, we're honored to welcome Karen Murdock, a changemaker working at the intersection of memory, connection, and social innovation. Karen Murdock is the founder of Voice Memories, an innovative digital platform that combines personal photos, voice recordings to reduce isolation and support cognitive health in older adults. With a background in caregiving and an interest in social innovation, Karen designs practical, scalable solutions that center on relationship building. She is currently piloting Life Stories Cafe and home use with Health Cities, Senior Hubs, and Caregivers Alberta's, while also leading the development of Cognimetry, a platform or complementary platform for monitoring changes in episodic and semantic memories. Karen is also a steward of the Edmonton Age Friendly Alliance and founder of the Silver Connection Network. Tanse, Karen, welcome to the Dementia Collective.
Thank you so much.
So tell me, what inspired your journey into caregiving? How did you get here?
Oh, I wouldn't say so much that it was inspired, Andrew. It was a shock to the system is closer to it. I ended up with a very good friend who we started to notice cognitive issues were developing. I ended up having to run to her home constantly to rescue her. And at that point, I don't think I even realized I was becoming a caregiver. It was just keeping all of our heads above water as we dealt with issues that were happening to her, because she was not sure how to handle the situations anymore.
And so how many years did you do that for?
I still support her, but she now lives in long-term care. And we did that from her home for about 2.5 years. It took us about a year to get the diagnosis of dementia. And now as I look back at it, I think she was probably dealing with the changes like mild cognitive impairment for much longer. But none of us knew, because you don't know what you don't know. In long-term care now for about a year, she has developed to the point where she spends all of her time in a Broda chair, and she's nonverbal 80 to 90% of the time. And I have actually found that I thought it was going to be that, oh, once she's living in long-term care, the role will be easier for me. I'm going to say no. It's actually been harder in my view of how we've had to handle things and get information communicated to us.
Wow. And so and this was a friend, you said?
A friend, yeah. She isolated when I met her, about 10 years before all this started. She had been raised in the same home that her grandparents had owned. Her mother moved into it after they passed. She never married. When her mom passed, she was then living in the home by herself. And most of her friends had been her mother's friends. And because of that, they were all passing away, leaving her very isolated and lonely. So, we developed a close relationship when I moved to the Edmonton area. And when the time came and she was looking at doing up power of attorneys and agent of health and all that, the cousins that she had were not close to her. And none of them actually lived right in the area, except for one who was well over 12 years older than her. So,
yeah. Wow. So how did you, what was your background going in? Or did you study caregiving, or you kind of just fall into it because of this friend? How did you get in here?
That's really interesting. I think I've always been a caregiver my entire life. When I was 2 months old, my dad became a double leg amputee. And because of that, we always had to make modifications around our home, around our lives, and things that we did. I spent most of my working career in the funeral and cemetery industry, where you are learning skills constantly to help people get through what they're going through, which is devastating, right? Because you could be dealing with somebody who's lost their spouse of over 50 years, or you could be dealing with a young couple who have suffered a miscarriage. So I think those skills just naturally led me in that direction.
So you created voiced memories after caring for your friend. Was she the inspiration then for it?
Absolutely. When the time came and we had to empty her home and she had to move to a locked memory care unit, we started dispersing the estate. And of course, we had like 30 photo albums. And it was, what do we do with these photo albums? We'll digitize them. So we looked at digitizing them. But then as things progressed, she was no longer able to talk about the photos herself. And so then I started taking on the role of voicing the photos for her. And it was then that we actually, as her dementia advanced very quickly, it was finally a way that I could connect with her again, just being her friend. Because as you can know and relate to, Andrew, is you get tired of always being in the caregiver role. You long for those times where you could just be friends or family again. And I found by doing the voice memories with her that we were able to do that again.
So can you explain for the folks that don't know here in depth, like what is voice memories? How does it work? How do families engage with it?
Right. So it's a very simple program. At the heart of it, you have a digital photo, and while you're looking at the image, you record a story. So you have a narrative to go with the story. And I find what's really interesting about that is that sometimes you go into the details of what you discover when you're looking at a photo, but other times you find emotions are coming up and you can voice those into the story behind it as well. And then it's embedded. So anytime you're viewing the photo in the future, you can hear the story being played. And the interesting thing is, like with Janice, by the time we got on to using voice memories with her, when the software was developed, she could no longer speak. So I had to voice those memories. So the next thing we hope to do is look at, if we play those for her when I'm not around, will that bring her comfort? Because she will hear my voice as well as hearing the story behind her photos.
Wow. Have you guys done any research or understanding of like what is the cognitive implications of these stories being done back?
Yeah, we're just starting to do the research on that. We got some very first user feedback actually today, which was really interesting. But it's based on reminiscence therapy, which has been around since the 1960s. So it's well documented and known how it's an active cognitive engagement rather than passive engagement. So you're starting to build new pathways that can help you to even look at the future rather than just sitting there playing a game. Or like, a game is not passive per se, but it's not relationable, right? And as you mentioned at the beginning, I believe in it being developed around relations and stories because family history is so important.
Mm-hmm. So how did your own caregiving experiences specifically shape the design of this platform, whether it's your father, whether it's the friend who now is in long-term care? How has your specific journey manipulated the platform you made?
I think what happened as that was happening is I've always been a person who believed very strongly in family history. And I believe that that's at the core of relationships and caregiving, is that connection that you have, and to keep it strong. Like the feedback we received this morning from our user, he talked about how he sat there with his family and they talked about, well, when was that? And what were this details? Oh, remember, mom was on the other side of the camera and this person was off to the left. So it really stimulated conversation. And I think that's what I've always discovered, that when you engage people in stories, that they connect so much better.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So voice memories is built around 3 core pillars. Can you walk us through those and how they help build trust?
Yeah, and so we gave a lot of thought to how do we introduce that. And so the first thing is having the voice memory cafes. And we have done one rurally now, and we have another one booked to do in an urban center. And having people gather around and reminisce about something that is familiar to, whether it's to their culture, whether to a life experience. So we created the first one around the Beatles, because just about everybody within that time frame would have some memory or some experience with that situation. There are just moments in our life, right, that we recall. So it gets people talking and relating, and oh, let's have another coffee. And then we found they were talking about, oh, that reminds me of this. So it really engaged people. So it's a nice, friendly way to make relationships, hopefully to stop being isolated. You'll want to come out to this and enjoy yourself with others. And then that can lead you into using it for home use, which can be just to document your family history. But also a caregiver can use it with you to start sharing the stories with them. So that bonds you a little bit closer, even to whoever your caregiver is. If they don't know the story, if it's a professional caregiver, for example. So it just sort of builds along that way to cognimetry, which is our third pillar, which will, again, we just have a POC with it right now, but we're looking to...
sorry, what's a POC?
Proof of concept. Okay. And so what we're looking to do is you have the family photo, the individual records the story, same idea, right? But then it can be reviewed with questions. So then, did the question change? Did it take longer to remember husband's name? Or did it go from my husband Frank in the story to all of a sudden being this man looks happy? So looking for those kinds of changes happening. So, and then it's not clinical feeling. It's more just relaxed and enjoyable.
That sounds interesting, especially how it is the name change, like you said, Frank versus the man. Yeah. How are you determining that? How are you evaluating that? Because that seems really clinically valid for what is the evolution of speech and cognitive processing.
Right. So we're not that far along yet. We've just finished building the software. And now what we're doing is my husband has long COVID. So we're actually going to be doing some testing with him just to see how it works. One of the developers, his grandparents have volunteered, and his girlfriend has a tumor in her brain, and she's also going to be looking at using it so we can get some fine-tuning done, and then we'll be working to do the research.
Wow, that's amazing. So how are you envisioning that these 3 pillars are going to support prevention, connection, and early monitoring for cognitive changes?
Yeah, so, obviously prevention is going to be, we know there's modifiable risks to dementia, and one of them is isolation, loneliness, passive engagement with your cognition, not getting out and actually doing activities. So we're hoping that we'll be able to end some of that isolation as a preventative measure to help them stay longer in their home through the home use. And then our vision with cognimetry is to release it to caregivers. So you can monitor at home. So it's taking some of the load off of the clinicians at the office. If you can go in and say, oh, I've noticed these things happening with my mom, and this is some information that I've gathered for you, and they can see these data points. Then, because I know one of the problems I ran into with Janice is, well, this may be this, it could be that, and you would end up taking a long time. Like Janice's diagnosis happened that she got admitted to the hospital for the anxiety and depression inpatient program, and she walked out of there 8 weeks later with the diagnosis of dementia and had to move straight to a locked memory care unit. So hopefully we can prevent some of that. And that's why I'm such a big believer in community and supporting each other. because I think if we all work together and use the channels that are out there to get to the people that need the software the most, we'll have the most success.
Yeah. So this might be a good time to, since you talked about community, can you bring us into what is the Silver Connection Network and how does it connect all these things? And what are you working on for that?
Yeah, so the Silver Connection Network is a group of businesses that support seniors, and they all look at solving a different piece of the puzzle, right? So bringing in different people that, for example, going back to Janice when she was living in her home by herself, she phoned me one day really upset. She had signed an agreement that she shouldn't have, and she realized it after the fact. And then I was able to call on my girlfriend who owned a home companion business to go be with Janice because I couldn't. I had a different client already booked so that we could have it removed and get the document signed, right? And then when it was time to clear the house, we were able to reach out to get somebody to come in to clear the house. So to try to make it easier for caregivers, because we need a lot of resources. And if you don't know where to go to get those resources, it's tough. So having this network of people that get to know each other, they like each other, they trust each other, when they meet a new client or they're working with a current client, they can say, I really think you could benefit from this service. You should look into this.
So the network is for care practitioners and organizations rather than the caregivers necessarily themselves, right?
That's right. That's correct.
Okay, so they get the people around who are involved so they can build that community and cross collaboration support.
Absolutely. Here's a great example. We've been working with the client for about a year, and I started to get very concerned about things I was seeing. So I reached out to her brother and said, we need you to come into Edmonton and meet with us because I think your sister has MCI. And so he did. And I said, I'm not really the best person to be supporting her at this point with my home organizing business. It'd be much better off if she had a companion, and you need to see a lawyer and get your documents in place before she progresses to the point where she no longer has capacity to make these decisions.
Yeah, totally. So shifting back to voice memories a little bit, you noted that voice memories addresses two modifiable risk factors for dementia, social isolation and low cognitive engagement. So how do you address this in your platform in order to reduce the risks?
Well, the thing is, we hope to get engaging through senior centers and different hubs and getting the information out there, because people can't use what they don't know exists. Get them out there, get them engaging, building relationships and friendships again. That's an important part of what we hope to do. And because its reminiscence is known to stimulate cognition, that will help with that as well.
And so you mentioned earlier that care providers as well as families can use this in the day-to-day interactions with the people?
Absolutely. And I think somebody who has just started or wants to monitor it for themselves to see if there's changes along the way. So even like with voice memories, even though there's no data points, if you start recording the stories with your parent because you notice there's something strange happening, you're noticing that things are not the way they used to be, you can use that to monitor to see if there are changes, right? They can record the story. You can then show them the photo without playing the audio and see if there is a change. So I think there's people who want to be proactive could use it, caregivers for family members. And I think even one of the hardest parts for me, like with my dad, was after we lost mom. He was very lonely, even though he lived in a retirement community. And so having a way, like he would phone me at 5 o'clock every night. We'd talk for 5-10 minutes, but he didn't have much to talk about, right? Because his world was so small. Yeah. But if you have these stories that I could take a family photo from years ago, send it to him, he could look at it, then we'd have something to share and talk about, right? I've even noticed that with my brothers. We've started doing that a lot, and I've learned things about them that I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, since we met, I don't know, maybe a year ago we met.
Yeah.
And since we've kind of done that, I've been kind of thinking like, asking my dad stories like, are you starting to remember? I never thought about it, right? The day-to-day interactions with my father, who's 60 something. I don't really think about like what's are his stories. He knows all my stories because growing up, like, what are your stories? Tell me about these things. Like, we had my mom's birthday the other day, and just be able to hear him talk about, yeah, this is where your mom and I were at this place. We were doing this thing. We swam across the lake, did this thing. And we typically, especially with the millennials, we typically overlook those kind of stories. So I'm glad that you guys are doing what you're doing to really make those conversations impactful for us and my parents and my in-laws stuff. Like, what are their stories that we don't necessarily know, or they told us years ago and I don't remember the details.
And that's a big thing, right? You don't remember the details. We have this false belief that we'll always remember the details. And often within 3 to 4 months, little tiny details do start to slide on us unless we rehear the stories. And I find the interesting thing is when you're looking at a photo, it brings up memories long forgotten. Right? Like, I sent my brother a picture of the Beatles and I recorded my memory of it as being the youngest in the family, sitting on Dad's lap, hearing the music and being blown away by what I was hearing. And he shared with me, Karen, when I looked at that photo, it reminded me that was the last day I ever skated because I asked Mom for a guitar.
Wow. It's so interesting. Have you considered recording, say, a married couple telling the same story and having both perspectives of it as a way?
I haven't, but we have looked at eventually, as the software gets built out, having the ability for other people to put their viewpoint on the story. My oldest brother is 7 years older than I am. So when we talk about things, his vision and what he remembers is much different than mine. Like, I remember, for example, hearing all the stories about Dad losing his legs and how it affected the family. But it's all hearsay because I was so little. Terry remembers it. So when I show him pictures from that time frame, he brings up stories that to me just shocked me, like things like being 6 years old and actually going into the stairwell at the hospital because he had to throw up after seeing our father. Things I never knew about my brother, right? And it gave me a new eyes to look at him through that as well, right? And it gave us, again, something to converse about, right? Because sometimes that's the hardest thing as you're growing up and you're not leaving your home as much as you used to. You don't have as many news stories, as much fun things happening in your life. So when you can draw on those memories, those moments of shared family, it's great.
Yeah, I think about as well my grandmother. My grandma passed away last year, right? And my son keeps talking about, I miss great grandma, and he talks about the things that they did. But I keep thinking, like, how cool would it have been if we had those audible stories? We have some videos and stuff of her, but like the audible stories that she can tell about life growing up, somewhat, in this thing she did with Uncle Don or these kind of people, to be able to convey those stories, or your dad. So me did this dumb thing, like, what are being able to tell these stories so that my kids can know more about great grandma. I think that's the strength there, right?
I think that's very true. And like my dad said to me once, I was setting up his apartment and we put a current picture of Mom on his nightstand, and I got out their wedding picture and put it up there, and he said, who would have thought that young couple would be like this today? Because you forget sometimes that your parents and grandparents were young ones themselves.
Yeah, my parents never were, though. So you've spoken about helping caregivers reconnect with their loved ones beyond just the caregiving role. So can you talk about why this shift is so important, and how do you make that possible?
Right. So we're just going to be starting with Caregivers Alberta in shortly, and we've been talking about what's going to look like, because we don't want to be the ones going in there telling them how to do this. What do they want from us is more my approach. And one of the things that I've been looking at is, I know how it made me feel to spend time with Janice, just being her friend again, right? And being able to share those moments, those stories again, so that you're not always feeling like you're living with nothing but stress and anxiety. As you know, when you're a caregiver, it's very hard. and you never seem to get out of that role. So to be able to sit there and just enjoy yourselves again, I think just even for a moment can make a huge difference. Like with Janice, I was there one day and we did the voice memories, and she came across her body and took my hand and held it close to her heart, and I started to get teary. And she was like, "Oh no, Karen, I didn't mean to upset you." And I was like, "No, Janice, it's okay. These are good tears." But I hadn't heard her or connected with her in months. So to have that minute of joy again, that just got me excited and ready to say, okay, we need to look at how can we bring this to more people.
So what are some of the feedback that you've heard from families using, whether it's the Life Stories Cafe, whether it's voice memories? What are some of the feedback you've heard? What are some of the highlight stories specifically looking at dementia?
I think when it comes to dementia, we don't have a lot of feedback yet because we can't test with that until we have approval from the HREB, right? So what we've been doing is working with those who have normal memory loss and those who have maybe some MCI that isn't diagnosed. And the feedback has been very positive from everybody in how it made them feel more connected, how they feel they're really leaving something valuable to the family.
Wow. So where do you see this technology going forward?
I would like to see this incorporated into a way that supports public health first, because we need more prevention out there, right? So that's my first goal, is to look at how can we bring this to more people and change some of our policies regarding everything being reactive. We need more prevention tools out there for sure. And we're slowly seeing that trend, I think, happening here in Alberta. So that's my first goal, is to get it used that way, to support caregivers and just help seniors who are aging in place in the community. Those are my first goals, and then work at bringing it into other systems as we move along.
And are you just supporting Edmonton, Alberta-based caregivers right now, or is it Canada-wide? Like, what is the boundary that you're using right now to support?
Right now, we are concentrated in Alberta, and beyond that, we do hope to take it across Canada and further, because this is a global issue, right? We're certainly not alone in this, with caregivers needing support and people with dementia and seniors feeling isolated and lonely. So I'm actually part of a knowledge sharing hub out of India, where we share information as it comes up. I had a gentleman from there reach out to me with this great document that talked about the different supports that seniors will need to stay in their home, which is what we know is going to be the future. They want to stay in their home, but also there is no place else for them to live. So we need to have supports in place, because just wanting something to happen isn't good enough, right? You need to have something to support you in that decision.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So if you could leave our listeners with one takeaway about aging, memory, or connection, what would that one thing be?
You know, the thing that I think about when I think about it is, I can't change the diagnosis. That is out of my hands. But I can change the experience for the person who's experiencing the change, and for myself as the caregiver.
Awesome. And if you have any parting words, what would you like to say?
I would just like to say thank you. And I'm so appreciative of what you're doing, Andrew, because I think we need to have more people like you who understand the importance of cultural awareness in their software and connecting people.
Thank you. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Dementia Collective. We're grateful to have guests like Karen, who are making a real difference in the lives of caregivers and older adults. If today's conversation resonated with you, be sure to follow the Dementia Collective wherever you get your podcasts, and share it with someone who might benefit from it. And if you're looking for support for your own dementia caregiving journey, we're here for you. Reach out to us anytime at BlueBell. You're not alone, and you don't have to walk this journey without the help that you need. Until next time, you are seen, you are strong, and you are doing something extraordinary.